what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another Pokemon Go video. This is going to be a quick tutorial on how to catch Latios using excellent throws. After having a very frustrating time throwing at Lugia, you should find throwing at Latios much easier. Unlike Lugia, you can actually use the circle lock method on Latios. Now, for those of you guys who don't know what the circle lock method is, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a brief explanation, but if you would like a more detailed explanation, feel free to watch any of my past throwing tutorials. The circle lock method is when you hold down the Pokeball to get it in a specific range. And once you get it to the range that you desire, in this case that is going to be the excellent range, do not touch the Pokeball until the attack animation starts. If you touch the Pokeball before the attack animation starts, this will reset the range. So that is something that you're going to want to try and avoid doing. The idea is to start winding up the Pokeball as soon as the attack animation starts, and once it gets towards the middle of the animation, that is when you want to release the Pokeball, ultimately making contact right as the range reappears. This will ultimately prevent Latios from double attacking, and it should also save you some Pokeballs as well, on top of increasing your consistency with excellent throws. Now the next thing I would like to go over are the throwing patterns for Latios. So there's two different types of positions. We have the normal position at its base height, and then we have the position where it flies up into the air. We're going to call that one the high position. So first, let's go over its base height position. Now, as soon as Latios does its attack animation, it is going to swoop around really fast. Once it comes back into position, that is when you're going to want to release the Pokeball. As you guys can see on screen, I actually hold the Pokeball a little bit longer just so Latios can come straight back into position and it's not off to an angle. This way I can get a good idea of where to throw it. Now, I highly recommend doing the same as well. I know I told you guys earlier with the circle lock method, you're gonna wanna release during the middle of the animation, but with Latios, you actually want to release a little bit later just so you can get a good idea of where it's going to be. Since it swoops around, you don't really have a great idea of where it's going to land. But by waiting a little bit longer, it'll position itself back, and then once it lifts its head back up, that's where you're gonna want to throw. So by doing that, you should still be able to throw the Pokeball right before the range reappears, ultimately making contact and landing an excellent throw. As you guys can see on screen, I wind up from the left side, and as soon as Latios comes back into range, I throw to the middle of the right side. Now what you're gonna wanna do is just follow this throwing pattern exactly the way you see it, guys. I definitely felt that a big mistake that a lot of people make, including myself when I first started getting the hang of throwing at Latios, was that I would overshoot the range, or undershoot the range. So just follow this throwing pattern exactly the way you see it, guys. Watch how I throw to the middle of the right side, and it makes contact with Latios right in the middle. That is exactly how you want to do it when it's at its base height. Now, something to keep in mind when you're throwing at Latios is that occasionally when it breaks out, it'll move over to the right side of the screen. To be completely honest with you guys, it's not a whole lot different than throwing at Latios when it's directly in the center. You're just gonna want to curve your ball slightly more to the right side. As you guys can see on screen, I don't alter my throw that much. I basically just throw to the same position in the middle of the right side, and that's just what you're gonna wanna follow when it's at its base height. It's not a whole lot different, like I said. You're basically just gonna wanna follow these throwing patterns as much as possible. So for Latios' high position, it actually reminded me a lot of Rayquaza. Now what I would do for Rayquaza is that I would wind up from the left side, and as soon as it came back into position, I would throw the ball straight down the middle. So as you guys can see on screen right now, I wind up from the left side and I throw the Pokeball high and straight down the middle. And that's basically what you're gonna wanna do. As soon as Latios does its attack animation, start winding up the Pokeball, and then as soon as it comes back into range, you're just gonna wanna throw it high and straight down the middle, just like Rayquaza. So I'm sure a lot of you guys are gonna actually be able to nail this one with excellent throws very fast. I'm very confident about that. It's more the base height that you're gonna have to kind of work on. To be honest, that was a little bit more tricky for me to learn and get that one down. But its high position, I felt that I honestly already had the muscle memory for it just because I was so used to throwing at Rayquaza. That's something you guys should definitely have no problem doing, but if you guys do struggle with that, just feel free to watch these attempts as many times as possible to get it down. And that's pretty much what you're gonna wanna do. Just follow the exact throwing position that I'm going for. Like I said, I throw high and straight down the middle, and that is exactly what you guys wanna do. And so that's pretty much gonna do it for both of these throwing positions. To be honest, guys, they're not actually that difficult. It's actually a lot nicer opposed to having to throw at Lugia for the past 2 weeks because you can actually use the circle lock method, and I guarantee that you're gonna have a way better consistency of catching Latios opposed to Lugia. But with that being said, I would like to go over both of these throwing patterns one more time before ending off the video. So for the base height, as soon as Latios does its attack animation, you're gonna wanna start winding up the Pokeball, and as soon as Latios comes back into the center of the screen, you're gonna wanna throw the Pokeball to the middle of the right side. As you guys can see on screen, I make contact a little after the range reappears, so you can can do this a little bit earlier and actually make contact with it more accurately. But like I said earlier, I like to give Latios a little extra time just so I can visualize where it's going to be. But once you get the hang of it, you can actually start throwing your Pokeball a little bit earlier, just so you can avoid that double attack. But for me personally, and for a lot of you guys right now, as you're starting off throwing at Latios, you're gonna wanna try and do this just so you can get a good idea of where it's going to position itself, because it honestly flies around and you have no idea where it's going to land. But as soon as Latios comes back into range and it centers itself in the middle of the screen, that is exactly where you're gonna wanna throw the Pokeball. But like I said, once you get the hang of it, you can start throwing the Pokeball a little bit earlier, once you know exactly when that range is going to reappear and where it's going to reappear. And so that's basically going to do it for the base height. Now moving it over to the high position, you're gonna wanna do the exact same thing, except this time when you wind up from the left side, throw the ball straight down the middle. As you guys can see on screen, as soon as Latios goes back into the center, I release the ball and I throw it high and straight down the middle. And if you guys follow that exactly the way that you see it on screen, you should have no problem landing excellent throws on Latios every single try. And that's pretty much gonna do it, guys. That is how you get consistent excellent throws on Latios. So I hope this guide helped you out. I will be doing another one for Latios as soon as we get it next month. Unfortunately, I can't cover that material right now since we don't have it, and I'm not gonna fly across the country, but don't worry guys, as soon as we get Latios, expect another throwing tutorial. But with that being said, that is pretty much going to do it for this video, so if you did find it helpful, feel free to hit that like button down below. As always, I'd really appreciate it. And if you'd like to see more Pokemon Go content, make sure to hit that subscribe button for future videos. And I will see you all real soon in the next one.